Many people ask the question, what's the difference between an agnostic and an atheist? And the reason I think a lot of people ask this question is many atheists today would like to have the strong-sounding name of an atheist, but in fact, they're actually just agnostics. So what's the difference? It seems to me that you can respond to the question, does God exist, in one of three ways. You could say, yes, God exists. You could say, no, God does not exist. Or you could say, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. So since there's three possible responses to this question, it seems to me most appropriate that we have three terms to sort of categorize each position. So if you say yes, you're a theist, right? God exists. If you say no, then you're an atheist, from the Greek without God, right? You say no. If you say I don't know, then historically you've been called an agnostic. That's from the Greek without knowledge. And so those would be the difference of those terms. When I was getting into my teenage years, atheist had not yet become a shorthand way of saying I'm more intelligent than you. If it had have meant that, like it sort of apparently feels today, I may have adopted the title. But at the time, I just thought, I don't know if God exists. I brought these questions to my mum and my grandma, who was Catholic, and I always sort of got unsatisfactory answers. They would say, well, it's just a mystery, and didn't seem to try. God bless them, they're both wonderful. But I just thought, well, maybe this was just a story people invented, and we just sort of ran with it. So I thought, well, I'm an agnostic. I just don't know if God exists. So one day, a good friend of mine came over, and we got to talking. And she said to me that she saw no meaning in life and was thinking of ending her own. I was completely ill-equipped to respond to this situation. I remember the first thing I said to her was, but you're beautiful. And she looked at me and went, okay. So I had to try harder. And so I tried giving her reasons. And I said, well, next year we'll be in high school. And she said, then what? And I kept trying to give her another reason. Well, then we'll get to do this, then what? Then we'll get to do this, then what? And eventually she looked at me and said, well, then what? And I had to say, well, I mean, we'll die. Everyone has to die. And when I said that, she looked at me as if to say, do you see my point? There's no meaning in life. I mean, she wouldn't have known how to articulate it perhaps at that point, but that's how it felt. So it seems to me that if atheism is true, certain truths follow. We could ask ourselves the question, where did we come from? And the answer would be, well, you've been coughed into existence by a blind cosmic process that didn't have you in mind. We could ask the question, who am I? Well, you are the result of matter plus time plus chance. We might ask the question, why am I here? We all want to ask this question and know the answer. And if atheism is true, the answer is there is no objective meaning to the universe from which it follows logically and necessarily there is no objective meaning to your life. It doesn't mean you can't pretend to have little meanings, but these in the end amount to self-imposed delusions. So if atheism is true, it seems to me we live in a meaningless universe and we live ultimately a meaningless existence. That's depressing. But just because it's depressing doesn't mean that it's not true. But I never asked myself the question, and no one really ever challenged me to say, well, do you have any good reasons to think atheism is true? But when it comes to showing other people that God exists, you can't just say, well, it seems to me like God exists, so you have to give some reasons. And there's a number of arguments that have been proposed for the existence of God. One of them is called the contingency argument. And it would sort of go like this. Everything that exists has a reason for why it exists. Everything. So shoelaces, Beethoven, Pepsi, comets, the universe, everything. Me. Okay, the next premise would be the explanation for that thing exists either outside of itself or it is itself. The explanation is contained in itself. So I'm explained by my parents. You know, my shoes are explained by the people who made them. But if everything is like that, if everything is explained by something outside of itself, well, then you have this infinite regress in time of something that always needs to be explained. And if that's the case, then there was never a first explanation, and never a first cause. And that seems ridiculous. So it would seem that there needs to be something that is not itself explained by something else. Now that doesn't get you to Christianity, but I think it says a lot about God. God is what Christians and Jews and other theists have said. God is a metaphysically necessary being whose non-existence is impossible. And I think that's a good start towards the existence of God. I wrote a short book called 20 Answers Atheism. And essentially I proposed 20 arguments against Christian theism and respond to them. And these have been, I found these were like the 20 most common objections and arguments that I heard from atheists and agnostics. And I tried to respond to them in a concise, logical, unheated sort of way. And so we sell them at Catholic Answers. You can get them in bulk for like $1 each. And so my hope is that we can flood parishes and nursing homes and whatever else, university campuses, to show that Christianity is an intellectually viable option. Right, that Catholicism is a champion of reason, and so we can show that we have good reasons for the things that we believe.